good one. Let me get out of the way. Unless you want me to lip them.
Coming in. Oh! Yeah! Yeah! Got you! Woo! This delta's been beating my rear into the ground.
Hey, what's up guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman here, and today I'm going to be talking about the best spring baits. I'm not going to simplify it as much as a lot of these other channels will out there. I don't know if they're just not super familiarized or overly experienced with bass fishing, or they just don't give you guys credit for understanding that there's a whole lot more that goes into it. You know, I see these guys naming the four best spring baits. Unfortunately, it is not that easy. If you want it to be that easy, this is not the video for you. I respect my viewers. I think my viewers are intelligent. They have a lot to learn. So I like to give you guys a lot of extra information and not dumb it down. So that being said, I want to talk about spring in general. I am going to go over the baits that I think tend to be best, but there's a lot of variations to that, and I'm going to go over that too. So spring in general, you have to imagine the fish are moving up near the shallows. This is spring. This is when the water temperature is around mid-50s. You know, they're moving up to the shallows. They're coming in off the main lake points. They're getting near that shallower water. Mid-spring, you have fish spawning. Once that water's closer around 60 degrees, you're going to have more fish spawning. What happens is you're going to have cold front days that come in during that time, and those fish that were up super shallow are going to move slightly deeper at that same spot or into heavier cover, so that requires different stuff. And then you have fish when they're done spawning or in the post spawn. So you have male bass guarding fry that are going to be aggressive. Sometimes you have big females that move slightly out deeper or back into heavier cover. So I want to give you a better idea of the baits you need to be using around that time to target these fish. Each location you're at, whether you're at a river, whether you're at a lake that primarily has shad, or the primary bait fish is bluegill, all these baits are going to be different for you. So if I say, oh look, this is the one bait you need to be using, I don't credit your intelligence. So if you see a video like that, you really need to think that through. All right, so okay, might as well just start off with a square bill crankbait. Square bill crankbait, the bait gets down roughly 3 to 4 deep. This is a Bill Lewis Echo 1.5. Andrew Upshaw designed this bait. Hell of an angler, good friend of mine. This is down there deflecting off the bottom. So you have to think about, in the spring, what are bass thinking about doing? They're thinking about bulking up. They have to eat a ton. The water's warming, they're moving shallow, eating a ton. They have to bulk up for their spawn. So a crawdad, high calcium, high protein meal deflecting down there on the rocks where it is a shallow area where they may be looking to spawn is going to be good. Now you have to think about what else a square bill does. It deflects down there. A lot of the time you hear this reaction strike, reaction bait. A reaction bait is a moving bait that deflects off of things, or a moving bait that you twitch. It's basically a bait that you're moving. You can force bass to react to it, okay? It's not dropping a worm in there and them coming over to eat it. That's more of a hunger strike, but you can cause them to react. They might eat this out of hunger thinking it's a crawdad, but you can deflect it off those rocks and rip it by their head with a ton of rattles, and they can eat it at that point. But I also want you to think of a contrary to this in the spring. Let's say it's slick, calm, and sunny. This is not going to work that well. I don't care where you are at in the country at that time, it's not going to work that well. So you have to think, well, if this is supposed to work all spring long, no matter what conditions, if another video tells you that, well, then it's supposed to work, but guess what? It's not going to work. So let's think of something that does.
Hang with us, guys. We'll be right back. Oh, you heard they got weapons of big fish destruction? Well, you heard right. BWA Fishing Performance is the newest company hitting the U.S. market by storm. With some of the sickest swim baits around and non-cookie cutter style lures that you could ever get your hands on, it's time to show these fish something new. Visit BWA.com. Hey guys, did you know that yours truly is now hosting Lucky Tackle Box's monthly panfish instructionals? And aside from relentless fish catching, I'll be breaking down the rigging and the gear you need to get going along the way. And of course, a few extra tips to help you score more fish on the goodies included in your box. So remember, the tug is our drug. So go visit LuckyTackleBox.com and get signed up today. Attention Northern California anglers, have you been to Boat Country in Escalon with one of the largest selections of welded aluminum fishing boats from North River, Hughes Craft, and now Crestliner? Chances are they have the right boat for you. And did I mention they have a full service center to take care of all your repair or boating maintenance needs? If you're a boat owner or just looking to become one, you owe it to yourself to check these guys out. Visit BoatCountryUSA.com or stop on by. We'll see you there. Bigger, better, badder. The evolution of the buzzbait is upon us. The Evolution Baits Grass Burner is a high-performance bass snatching machine. High-end components, inline displacement, larger profile, balanced body for fast or slower retrieves, better deflection, and oversized treble hooks. You wouldn't bring a slingshot to a gunfight, would you? Find out more at evolutionbaits.com. Did you know that P-Line makes specialized lines for all your fishing needs, from the super strong abrasive resistant CXX or the low stretch super stealthy CX Premium? Or maybe you're looking for invisibility or super bite detection with P-Line's 100% fluorocarbon. No matter what your needs, P-Line's got it covered. To find out more, visit P-Line.com.
P-Line, baby.
Ever tried pulling a planer board next to your boat when trolling or fishing from a swift current bank? If not, you're missing out on one of the most phenomenal fish catching machines on the market today. With Yellowbird planer boards pulling your lines perpendicular to your boat, you can't help but catch more fish. Find out more by visiting www.yellowbirdproducts.com.
So the contrary to that, slick, calm, clean conditions, that calls for plastics. It calls for something like dragging a worm. Look at that, black and blue. If I told you a black and blue spring worm is gonna work every time, I would be lying to you. I would need this worm in clean water to look more green pumpkin. So how could I say it's the best for baits? There's 10 different colors of a worm like this. This is a Biwa prism. This is a Biwa creature bait right here. It's a crawdad, it's a flipping bait. So how can that all be the same? Well, they're not, all right? So let's say it got slick and calm. Well, if it's slick and calm, I want to throw this swim bait right here by itself on a jig head. But you can clearly see this is an underspin right here. Well, let's say it's a little bit windy, a little slick and calm, and I can't get bit on a reaction bait like a lipless crankbait or this square bill right here. I can't get bit on those. Well, maybe I'll throw something like an underspin, which has a little bit of flash. It's a little bit of a hard bait, but it has a very subtle, soft presentation. That's the Biwa Deuce, that swim bait right there. Well, I still can't get bit on that. Well, I'll throw it on a straight jig head, all right, without an underspin. It's more natural, more subtle, looks more realistic. If I'm not getting bites at that point, I'll drop down to a worm, something very realistic, and drag it slow across the bottom. Or I'll wacky rig it and pitch it up there next to trees or ledges and fall slow, natural, to get those bites. Not everything is going to work under all conditions in the spring. Okay, so we have that mindset there. Now, I want you to look at this too. One of the most popular baits in the spring is a lipless crankbait. Well, here's another crawdad pattern. Here's a square bill. Let's say I was deflecting down there. Well, let's say I'm fishing an area without rocks. Yeah, I could still use a square bill. Let's say it's like 8 foot deep. This is not getting down there, but I can use something like this Bill Lewis rattle trap, let it get down there in that grass, and rip it along that ledge and get those big females to react to it. If you see there's a ton of shad in your area, maybe the crawdad bait's not the deal for you. Maybe you have to use a chrome and blue, like a shad color. I just showed a variation where I put another split ring and a little swivel to a little underspin blade, which gives that bait a little bit rock. If you have spotted bass in your system, it really helps them hone in on it with that little underspin on the bottom of there. But you have to understand these variations. If you see shad around and clearly they're bulking up on shad, or you catch a fish and you put it in your live well and it's spitting up shad, maybe you don't want to be using a crawdad bait that day. Or if you were throwing a shad bait and you catch a bass and he's spitting up crawdads, maybe that's a good time to switch to the variable. So there is no, top 4, top 5 baits. Yeah, there is a lot of good ones, and these are ones that I'm gonna have tied on the majority of the time sitting on my deck. Now, let's take a look at this, for example, a jig. A lot of people neglect the jig. In the spring, the bass are early spring, the bass tend to associate to the bottom. Hopping a jig down there, black and blue, dirty water, hopping that down there is going to get you a big bite. It's in their face, they're looking to bulk up, it looks like a crawdad, it's going to get you that bigger bite. Also, big weed guard, well, now we know we can fish it around timber, more obstructions. Not as good. A lot of snags and hang-ups, not as good. So the jig's going to be a better deal in that scenario. Bass fishing lures are tools. We need to think of them as tools and not that we have to use this because this is what the bass want to eat. No, they're primarily tools to fish that particular scenario or situation we're in. Them looking like the fish or crustaceans that they're eating is almost a secondary to their purpose as a tool, and then getting them to react is like a third thing. This is where you use unnatural colors like all chartreuse or all yellow. You're trying to get them to react, you're trying to get them to find it. So think of a bass lure as the tool to fish the right scenario, then matching looking like what they are eating as a secondary, and then super audio or weird displacement as a third thing. And then if you want to add scent into the equation, you can use that as a fourth. So we got that jig right there. So let's say we're in the spring, the water temperature's in the mid 60s, or even if you see bass spawning. Well, in the middle of the day, you're gonna notice when you see bass roaming around, you're gonna have a tough time catching them. That's because they're staging. They have spawning on their mind, they're staging. One way you can catch staging fish is to wacky rig something like a Zoom trick worm or a little Biwa prism or a Senko. You can wacky rig and pitch that out, but you need to keep your boat far away and you need to lead the fish by a long distance. If you drop it over his head, you're gonna spook him because he has no intention of eating. If you throw it way off in the distance in front of him, he thinks he was aware of something or she thinks she was aware of something and might go check it out, but the odds of catching those are low. You generally want to target around those areas, deeper or heavier cover. The fish you tend to see roaming are a low percentage odd of catching that fish because usually they're in a negative, they're not even in a neutral. Their positive is feeding, neutral is maybe will feed, negative's just hunkering or has something else entirely on their mind. So let's say we're in that shallow water first thing in the morning where we've seen fish spawning, where we've seen fish staging and roaming around. A buzzbait, something like the Evolutions Bait's grass burner right there, can get you a ton of strikes. Now, let's look at this versus a regular buzzbait. A regular buzzbait has one big single hook on the back. Well, let's say they're spawning, let's say they're protective, and the post-spawn bass swat at lures a lot because they want it away from their fry. Two big treble hooks. Let's say they're spawning and you're throwing it over a shallow flat and the female slaps at it to say, get out of there. What do you think is going to have a higher hookup ratio? Two big exposed treble hooks or a single hook on a buzzbait? Of course this is going to catch more fish. So I could say, oh, the buzzbait's one of my top 10 lures, but if you don't have an option when they're squatting at a top water like this, you're not going to catch nearly as many fish. So I can't say there's a top 5 or there's a top 10. There's always going to be a lot of different lures to give you different options. That being said, when the fish are moving up shallow in the middle of the spring, the females are not on beds yet. They're not going to travel way out to the depths. They might move out to the nearest deep spot, but on the California Delta and Clear Lake, a lot of these lakes I fish, they move into heavy cover, under matted vegetation, under deep grass. No one ever mentions a frog as a best spring bait. I was out last night, I stuck a 6-pounder on a frog, and nobody else is out there frogging yet. They're thinking the water's got to be in the upper 60s. Once that water hits 60 degrees and the fish are in a feeding mood and they're shallow and they're under matted vegetation, you have options in the spring. You can flip a Texas rig weighted bait, a tungsten weight right here. Here's a 1/2 ounce, all right? I can flip that in there and force those fish to react if they're neutral or negative, okay, that are under that mat. Or if they're positive, they'll blow through that mat and the thin parts of the mat or the holes in the mat or around timber or brush or up tight to a bank where there's too many snags. Get that frog in there. If it's thick matted vegetation near those flats, flip in there. The heavier stuff, sometimes you need to go. Sometimes you need a punch with a 1.5 ounce right there. It's the same deal. I had super thick matted vegetation. I just have to go to a heavier weight and punch them. And if you think you can't punch fish early in the spring, you are wrong. They're in there. They're shallow. The big females, the sun comes out, they're going to move under there if they're not up on beds. If they're in the post-spawn, they're going to move under there. The pre-spawn, they're going to move under there. They're still under there and they still want to feed. So it's a huge option for you. Now, what commonly happens during pre-spawn, post-spawn, spawn is you have cold fronts. It gets windy in the spring. It starts raining. The water muckies up and sometimes those fish just pull off and they suspend. It could be 20 feet of water and they'll suspend in 10. And it's really, really strange. This is where a jerk bait comes back into play. Early in the spring, when they're moving up to the points and they're moving to secondary points, moving into those shallow areas, jerk baits excel. Everybody knows twitch, twitch, pause, and you're gonna catch some fish on that. Well, another really good option around that time is the underspin. Post-frontal days, you don't have to switch to a plastic right away. If you switch to a plastic and you're dragging the bottom and catching fish, good. But if you're dragging the bottom and not catching fish, jerk bait, underspin. If it gets really slick calm and there's no wind, the swim bait by itself without the underspin can catch them. So these are two options on those days where it's post-frontal, it gets slick calm, you don't see fish up shallow roaming around, you don't see fish on beds. You have an option to go out and catch those suspended fish with these two baits right here. So this is all stuff I want you to keep in mind. Oh, there you go. Bladed jig, chatterbaits, you've all heard of that, right? Well, this is a huge spring bait, all right? I see guys neglect to mention that. I don't know why. Maybe guys are catching a lot of money on it and they don't want to mention it. So be it. In the spring, see that dark blade right there, how it's dark? And this is a dark profile. I have a little purple in here. Purple tends to look like brownish orange underwater to bass, in case you're wondering. So if you see this whole profile right here, it kind of looks like a bluegill, may look like a crawdad vibrating down there. When the water's dirty, real wind stained, if I can't see any deeper than 2 feet, I know a bladed jig is gonna catch me a lot of fish. If it's real windy, a heavier bladed jig like this is gonna catch me a lot of fish. I have the BWA tail gunner on there. It's got a lot of body kick and a lot of vibration. Putting off big displacement, going to catch me a big female. I went to boat flip a 6+ the other morning and she bounced off and hit my gunnel and went back out on a tough day, but I still got her to eat the big bait. So this is all spring baits. This is all stuff I want you guys to keep in mind. You know, you probably heard me not mention the drop shot. Drop shot works fantastic in the spring. Ned rigs work fantastic in the spring. That's more on the slicker, calmer days, you know, where a reaction bait's not gonna work. In the spring, we're all looking to catch some big ones. We're all looking to be a hero. I've done it myself. The last few times I've been out on the Delta, it got slick calm, it was post-frontal, we had a north wind. I knew it was gonna be tough. Should I have fished a worm? Absolutely. Should I have slowed down to get some extra bites? Absolutely. Did I do that? Absolutely not. I wanted to catch them on a frog. I wanted to catch them on a chatterbait. I wanted to catch them on a lipless. I wanted to fish fast. You know, I wanted to get out there and have some fun. But did I know to slow down? Absolutely. Yes, I did. One last but not least thing that I like to do. In the early spring, everybody knows when the water temperature hits around 50 degrees, even in the upper 40s, spinnerbaits work great. Here's an all red one. Crawdad, calcium, Bass Sea Red, they think calcium. Red only shows up to fish when they're about 8 to 10 feet away from the bait. Otherwise, it looks great. What I do, if there's toolies, bulrush, I'm not sure what you call them in your area of the country. We call them toolies out west. I know back east, I believe you guys call it bulrush. It's just that tall, you know, weed that stands up on the side of the bank that grows out into the water. I like to cast this through and bump toolies. I like to bump timber. Anytime you're reeling and that spinnerbait's going and you hit it and it deflects and changes speed, you can cause reaction strikes. My personal best happens to be on this bait right here. It's a Strike King 38 Special. I have no affiliation with Strike King, but I'll tell you the bait. When I'm bumping into stuff, I like to run it naked. What I refer to as naked is no trailer, because it's super thin and it can come through tight structure and cover better. Also in weeds, if you have a lot of weeds around, you keep reeling a spinnerbait. When it gets stuck in the weeds, keep reeling, your rod will get tight and it'll surge through and it'll change speed in between those pockets. Weed here, surges through in between that pocket, can force that big bass to react. Hopefully these tips helped you out, guys. Make sure to check out my Instagram, my YouTube, my Facebook. Email me at informativefisherman@gmail.com. Takes a while for me to get back. I greatly appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time. Best of fishing.